business, they say there is no I in team and your eyes roll. But if you're the CEO, how do you make sure your leadership team, your senior leadership team is helping and not hurting your organization? And if you are part of that team, if you're part of that team, how do you keep an eye on improvement so that you can level up? In this episode, I asked Seth Kahan these questions and so many more, and he answers them, and he answers them. Oh my gosh, such a great episode. Some of his answers still have me thinking, and I bet they will for you too. Enjoy. Welcome to this edition of Association Chat, which is your weekly online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with the topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the producer and host, Kiki L'Italienne, CEO of Amplified Growth Digital Marketing. And for today's show, we're talking about a subject that every association executive who is currently in a senior position, or those of you who hope to one day be in a senior position, will find critical in successfully leading your associations. I'm talking with Seth Kahan. Seth is, he's worked with senior leadership teams at organizations like the World Bank, Prudential Retirement, American Geophysical Union, Source America, Endocrine Society, and many, many others. I'm going to spare you the details, but he is a trusted advisor to leading association CEOs, and he is constantly working to achieve large-scale change through innovation. And so he's a regular contributor to CEO Update. He's the author of business bestsellers, Getting Change Right and Getting Innovation Right, if I can get it right. Thanks for joining us, Seth. Are you ready to get started today?
You bet. I'm excited. I'm pumped.
I am too.
All right.
So let's do this. All right. So senior leadership team, this whole idea of leveling up the senior leadership team is something that I have to admit, I had to look up information about it, find out more about what this entails, and so, you know, a lot of times people focus on this idea of leading from the top down, and they look at that key position of CEO. But let's talk a little bit about this senior leadership team, the SLT, and what is it, and does every organization need one?
Well, of course, if you have a very small organization, you may not have a senior leadership team because everybody's doing all the work all the time. And in fact, in associations, it's a regular phenomenon that the people who are in charge at the top are also doing work on the front lines, which creates a stress between execution and strategy. And a lot of big corporations, the people at the top only do strategy. But what a senior leadership team is it's essentially the second tier. It's the group of people who are responsible for pulling together all the different aspects of the organization and marshaling them towards the strategy and the execution on behalf of the mission of the organization. Usually a small group, sometimes big, sometimes as many as 10 or 12 people, usually more like 4 or 5 people, and usually with C in their title, you know, CMO, CFO, COO, things like that. So that's who the senior leadership team is.
So when people are looking at, CEOs are looking at building up their senior leadership team, what are some of the constant or more frequent issues that they come into? Like, what are the problems that you see them facing when they start looking at their senior leadership team and even developing what that is?
So the biggest problem that I see facing is this tension that everyone in the C-suite is faced with. And that is the tension between delivering results in the area that you have responsibility for and having an enterprise-wide view. So, for example, if you're the chief marketing officer, you have a work program, you're managing people, and you're going to be held accountable for the marketing in the organization. But what the CEO wants you to do is they want you to think like a CEO so that you create real synergies and integration with the other members of the C-level team, and that everyone in the senior leadership team forms like this phalanx that creates thrust into the marketplace that's unified, coherent, powerful, and moves the organization forward. And if all that CMO is doing is focusing on marketing, it comes at a big cost. So that person is living in this tightrope, right? They're accountable for the marketing, but their CEO wants them to play like they were a CEO. So that's probably the biggest challenge that CEOs face, is how do you get that group of people to be able to do both of those things? Because you can't give up on either one. You got to be able to do both.
So how do they do it? I mean, like they hire you and you come in and you help them. But like, so when they face those issues, I can imagine that there are these constant struggles that they're facing. There are a million other things that they're worried about. How do they go about handling these stressors or these issues that they come across?
Well, we have a natural model in our life, which is our family. So, when you're in your family, you've got to take care of everybody, no matter who you are in the family. Even if you're a little kid, you're sensitive to the dynamics and the responsibilities and what your role is. And at the same time, you need to take care of yourself. So you have this kind of, analogy that lives in your life of balance. I think that I believe in something that's called radical self-care, which is the idea that you take excellent care of yourself and it allows you to participate in all your roles at a much higher level. So there's still a very strong relationship between the two, but there's this intense focus on knowing what nutrients you need in order to be at your best. And I mean nutrients widely, it could be friendships or sleep or whatever.
What do you see that being the answer for most of your clients? Like, what are people mostly skipping out on? What are they missing out on? What nutrients are they missing?
Well, so if we're talking about radical self-care in itself, probably the biggest thing that I see at the C level is that people spread themselves too thin and work too hard. I would like to see a bigger focus on how do I create better results with less labor. Most people don't actively ask that question. Those that do, that are constantly honing themselves, get really good at creating high-powered performance in a lot less time and energy than their peers. So spreading yourself too thin, working too hard is a big one. Now that doesn't, of course, everybody's got their ups and downs. And, if there's a big event, you have to pull together, and sometimes you give up on sleep for a few days or you really push. So there's the natural ebbs and flows, but I'm talking about kind of the long haul. How do you sustain yourself?
Yeah. I don't know. I have to say, whether you're a CEO or not, I think that a lot of people face those challenges.
Absolutely.
And so, if you're trying to feed yourself the nutrients that you need for leadership, if you're trying to get to that point where you're not skipping over the things that make your organization stronger, and you look around and you realize, you know what? I don't have my senior leadership team necessarily built out around me. I haven't thought strategically about what to do. Here's who I do have around me, and I don't know that it's the right mix. I don't think it's right. What do you do then, Seth? Because I can see that being something where you walk into that situation, you sort of, you take care of yourself, you get to the point where you're looking around and you're like, you know what? Maybe all the right people are not on the bus. What then?
So you're talking about from the CEO's point of view?
Yes.
Yeah. Then you really have to make the changes that are required, which means that you need to either develop or acquire talent, and you need to consider letting go of talent. And the reason that you need to do that is because you're going to be held accountable for the organization's ability to achieve its mission. And that's your primary purpose. Now, I'm a big believer in balance and humane treatment of staff. So, to me, letting someone go is always a last resort. If somebody is not able to perform at the level that they want to, then I think that what they need is training and support. But if you have somebody who's resisting, someone who's not on board, someone who's calling out the mission or saying we're going down the wrong direction or is undermining activity, that's a different ballgame. Then I'm for ripping the Band-Aid off and getting the right people on the bus.
Okay, so there you go. Okay, let me riddle you this. Okay. So you have an excellent candidate, someone who is so smart, so brilliant, and you want them on your senior leadership team. However, there is clearly some sort of disagreement that is going on with what the right path forward means. Leveling up, letting go, what happens next after that?
Well, I look at roles and responsibilities. So the board is responsible for setting the strategic direction. And if they're not happy, they'll fire the CEO. So they have ultimate authority in an association. The CEO is responsible for operationalizing the strategy. That means, what are we going to do so that we get results? How are we going to implement this? And so if there's a disagreement between a member of the senior team with the CEO about how to go forward, the CEO wins. That's got to be something. I mean, there's certainly time for discussion and unpacking issues and being clear about nuances and understanding that, the intricacies or the relationships or the politics of success. I'm not saying that you should avoid any of that. But if you've got a basic disagreement between someone who's in the senior leadership team and the CEO has the final card.
So Richard says over here, work smarter, not harder. Amanda says, I've been hearing more and more about radical self-care lately. She's working on it herself. And then another Amanda, hi Amanda, says, how long do you give someone to improve before kicking them off the bus?
So let me take the last one first. I'll just work backwards there.
Yep.
Again, you've got to evaluate the attitude. If someone is not performing well enough, but they want to, then it's a different ball game than if they're doing an end run around you or undermining what you're doing. If you have some kind of sabotage or mutiny going on, I'm for ripping off the Band-Aid. Just move through it. Yeah. The CEO's got to move on. But if you've got somebody who's got genuine desire and they don't have the skills or they don't have the support or they don't have the resources to be able, then I'm for extending the development to them and giving them a path forward. You may need an interim solution if you have an initiative that requires someone who can perform better than they are able to, but I would consider it an interim solution. Again, if someone wants to do the job and they need something, I'm all for working with them to get them up to speed, because I think that desire is something that's hard to come by and extremely valuable.
I think you're right. I mean, and we talk about this a lot on Association Chat, where it is that desire that, if somebody's on a quest to learn, if somebody's constantly looking to educate themselves and better themselves, then we can't assume that, just the fact that they're trying and that they understand the importance of continuing to learn is so important. Richard says, attitude counts for a lot. Get them a coach if needed, certainly a mentor. Absolutely. Amanda says, in our case, I think the job is not compatible with their temperament. They want to do well, and I think they could, but maybe not in this role. And we don't have something else for them right now, but we don't want to lose them. And I mean, that is certainly a struggle. What do you have to say to Amanda?
If you're talking about parking someone, that's a pretty expensive proposition. I mean, you take their salary and multiply it times 1.5, and you have the total cost of the organization. And is the value that high? You might say yes. I mean, I don't know the circumstances. Right. You might look at that and say, absolutely, it's worth it. And then you give them another job to do until you can find the right role. But if you say no, then you have to kind of bite your lower lip and go for it.
Well, and I think also it's a case where sometimes letting them go is maybe the best thing for both parties, because sometimes they can then move on and find the thing where they excel, the place where they excel. And then you can find the person that is right for the job that you're looking for at that point, right?
Right.
Richard asked a great question. He says, is it temperament or is it culture clash? That's interesting. I've seen both, actually. So
yes, I have too. And culture is, it's a milieu that's created by everybody who's in the system. It's a set of mores. It's a set of expectations. The CEO, again, gets to be the conductor in the culture. Now, they have to be alert and aware enough so that they're modeling what they're attempting to create. Because if they're saying one thing and doing something else, then you have a clash right there that's within one person that will get spread through the organization. That actually will be magnified through the organization. But again, assuming you have a functional CEO, they get the baton. And, if you're in an organization when CEOs switch, you can find yourself in a situation where you really don't like the new culture that's coming in. And then you want to think about finding a job where you can have the culture that works best for you. I've worked with so many different kinds of CEOs with so many different kinds of temperaments, some of them that blow very hot or have old school, paradigms, but they're the ones who've been picked for the job. And so we have to then figure out a way to make it work in the environment. We're not going to get rid of the CEO unless the board decides to. So, we've got to figure out a way to work with that environment.
Okay, can I dig into that a little bit more, because you're known in this industry for working with people in senior leadership positions. And certainly there are people that end up in that senior leadership team role where they may have those conflicts with the CEO. And so if that's the situation and they end up in that position, um, what are your recommendations? I mean, certainly you have to figure out how to work with them in that case, but like, what do you suggest to people in that situation?
So we're talking a member of the senior leadership team that may have a new CEO that comes in and they're not sure that it's going to be a fit. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And
Yeah.
I will admit that in my past, I watched this happen to an association I was part of, and it was there was a lot of tension, to say the least. And so, what are your recommendations to that person on the senior leadership team?
So I have a basic orientation in terms of job or career trajectory, which is that we should all be improving all the time, looking for better work, that the more we can stay in step with our own personal transformation and increased capacity, the happier we'll be. So that flies in direct, contradiction to someone who says, look, I found a great job. I want to park my here. I'm willing to go through hell. It doesn't matter as long as I don't have to look for another job, or I don't have to change what I'm doing. So for that person, I'm not going to really have a solution. So what I tell people, and I tell my CEOs this, and I tell all the members of the senior leadership team, I think you should always be looking for your next job. I think you should be asking yourself, where do I want to go? What's going to motivate me? How am I going to get to the next level? And if the circumstances shift, that compass doesn't have to shift. It may become more urgent for you to take action, but it's still you, and you still want to have a great world and a great experience, want to be remunerated well, want to be doing good things in the world. So it looks like this place has been highly compromised. I'd be saying, okay, where am I going to go next?
Right. It reminds me of one of the first things I ever learned when I entered into the association space. I read a whole lot of stuff, and one of the things about leadership I read was that the very first thing that a really good leader does is they look for their replacement. And I think that the idea was on sustainability. It was on the idea that whatever it is that you create, you're trying to create something that lasts beyond you. And so if you do a good enough job, if you do your job well, then it will thrive even after you've moved on. Amanda,
let me just say one thing about that I think is important. I'm working with a senior team right now where there is a lower level manager in the organization who's extremely good, and she does not have her replacement. And the CEO wants to promote her to a much higher level of responsibility, much bigger salary, much greater impact, and it's in step with her personality. But because she doesn't have someone to replace her, it's not going to happen. So you want to find someone to sit underneath you so that you can go farther faster. You want to be ready when the opportunity comes to be able to say, I can step up because I've got my job covered.
Yeah. I think so many people are afraid they're afraid, and it's that fear that drives them, because they're afraid if I can be replaced, then that means that I'm not necessary. And it's, but they don't assume that that's maybe holding them back from moving forward or moving beyond where they are at the moment. And so that's kind of an interesting statement on fear and how fear can really limit us when we let it. Amanda says, let's say you are at a director level and you see the association needs to start innovating. I think we've seen that a lot in this space. You've proved yourself by innovating in your department, but so far the CEO won't move on innovation for the association as a whole. How might we convince the CEO to get started? Oh, they have some good questions for you today, Seth. They have some good ones. Okay.
Convincing someone is a great activity to get involved in. And there's a book I can recommend by John Cotter, who's probably the leader in change leadership. And it's called A Sense of Urgency. And it tells you how to create urgency in people. One of the examples he gives is uses theatrics. So this is not going to be a rational conversation. You're going to need to hit someone where, in their heart or their gut. So here's a short example that I heard John Cotter use once. I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but you'll get the idea. It was a surgical glove company, and a vice president came in and learned that they had a 1% defect rate on the line. They were making, I think it was 300,000 gloves a day. So that means that there were 3,000 gloves every day that had a hole in them. And he went to the CEO and said, this is unacceptable. And the CEO said, what do you mean, 1%? I mean, how could you possibly do better than that? And he, for 6 months, tried to get the CEO to change his position. Nothing worked. So what he did eventually was that he went and got a box and he put 90,000 gloves in it. And he brought it to a senior leadership team meeting and he dumped the 90,000 gloves on the table and said, this is how many people we put at risk of AIDS every month. And
wow.
That was a wake-up call. And that organization went on to create something like 0.05 defect rate, right? In other words, it woke everybody up, they addressed the issue, and off they went. So you want to ask yourself, is there a way that I can convey the power of innovation that's not just talking, but that where I can show them what's possible?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's pretty dramatic. Amanda, what do you think? Karen says a very similar example, an organization that ordered zillions of, and zillions is, this is a very scientific thing, of types of gloves instead of standardizing is used in Switch, which is another great book on change. Gutsy for sure, Amanda. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? I love that. And I wish that I were the person that could actually can you imagine the faces around the table? It's brilliant. So, okay. So I have to get back to the SLTs and looking at, your role in helping to develop, leaders and make them stronger. A lot of times you see CEOs struggling with their SLTs and SLTs struggling with their CEO, and everybody's trying to always presumably get better at what they're doing. So how do SLTs level up? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I want to just point out something that Richard contributed, Richard Young, and he talked about the importance of emotional intelligence. And this is a significant weakness in a number of CEOs and SLTs. And it brings, once people get up to speed on how they build rapport, what the impact of their behavior is on other people, helps them find strategies for communicating with people who don't have the same style that they have. That alone can make a huge difference. And that's a weak area that I see in a lot of organizations. Not all. Many of my leaders who are innovators are very strong in emotional intelligence, but some of them not so much. So I think that's a really worthy contribution. When we look at our lives, and I always come back to personal metaphors, because to me, leadership really is about the personal journey that we're on. One of the things that's hard to swallow is that the obstacles we face are often the path itself. There's that John Lennon quote, life is what happens when you're making other plans.
Yeah.
We think that we want to go on a vacation and we end up dealing with a flat tire. We think we want to go to Harvard and be in their business school, and we end up realizing that we don't have enough retirement savings. Whatever the thing is, if you can learn how to embrace that, how to shift and pivot and say, the obstacle has become my path. The reason that I've been hit with this is because there's something I need to address, and I can actually build strength by addressing it. That is an extraordinary level up that takes place at the enterprise level.
I love
so that when things don't go the way you want, you're trying to launch a big initiative and you find out the board's not on board with it. This is an opportunity to get on board with your board. And once you've done that, there'll be no stopping you, whatever you choose, and so on.
I love that. I love that on a personal level, because if you're familiar with Bryan Holaday, I read everything this guy puts out. He's younger than I am, but he is so great. He wrote The Obstacle is the Way. Another one is Ego is the Enemy. And it's a really, if you can take a chance to listen to his stuff, read his stuff, brilliant guy, and prolific. He writes all the time and writes for different publications. But it's that concept. It's that idea that, and I think that the idea that a leader would look at these challenges and see the opportunities that maybe lie in them, that's something that we can all take to our own lives and figure out how to apply that,
Yeah, I just checked him out on Wikipedia. He's 29. He's not.
Can you believe? Oh. And you get the gift card later in the mail, Seth. Right. No, he's not. But yeah, no, it's such a smart guy. And I mean, I look at that and I think he's really big on stoicism. He's really talking a lot about stoicism right now. And, but The Obstacle is the Way. Fantastic book that lends itself to this conversation. So with CEOs who are developing, they're trying to level up their senior leadership team. They're maybe looking, and I'm focusing on the CEOs, but really, even if you're in the senior leadership team and you're trying to level up yourself, right? What are some things that you can do? Certainly recognizing that there's this clear and compelling purpose, right, for what your team is doing. What do you have to say to that? How can people continue to develop that?
So I'll give you 3 ways that you can level up.
Okay.
And remember, we're talking about people who are already leaders. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in that position.
Right.
So, these are not people who are like laying on the sidelines, trying to figure out how to game the system. These are people who've stepped up, right?
Yeah.
So you have to, I assume that they're not broken, that they have strengths, significant strengths, and they're able to produce results better than the average person. So that's the quality of person you're working with. So all 3 of these things that I'm going to tell you come under the category of expanding your mental models. We can only create what we can envision. And if we haven't seen a model, I mean, this is happening to me in my own business. My business is growing faster than it ever has before. And I find that I'm the biggest limitation in its growth. What I can conceive of is what I create. And
Right.
so I go out and I meet other people who are doing bigger, better things than me and ask them how, so that I can have a different model.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. Yes.
So that comes under that behavior that I just described comes under what I would call experiencing new worlds.
Okay.
And I would say you've got to get your people up and out the door and go visit Disney, go visit Hewlett Packard, go visit, NASA, go someplace where people are doing amazing things and learn from a field trip and have the experience. You shouldn't just be reading about it or watching it on video. You should be, sitting in the room with the guy at NASA who does satellite testing and asking the question, how are you able to, do X, Y, or Z in such a tight time frame? So experiencing new worlds is key to expanding your mental models. Meeting face-to-face is the second thing with people who know how to do what you want to learn how to do. And I'm a big person for taking someone out to eat. I think there's magic in breaking bread. I think it's a ritual that's sacred and that it creates a bond, and you can get information that you won't get from sitting in a conference room with someone. But whatever you do, face-to-face is the way to go. There are still forms of communication that we do not yet understand that happen when 2 people are co-located that don't happen over a telephone or a video. The third thing is having a mindset of hunting for breakthroughs. Think of yourself as a tracker. You are like out there in the woods and you're trying to find the animal's steps and where did it go? Where's its lair? And only what you're hunting for are breakthroughs. And breakthroughs can come at you. Breakthroughs change your world. That's the definition of a breakthrough. So you don't want to be in a defensive position saying, look, I've got this one down. In fact, in Kotter's work, John Kotter, I referenced him earlier, if someone says, I know what I'm doing, that's the definition of complacency.
Wow. Okay. Wait a second. Hold up. Just let that sink in for a second, everybody. Wow. Okay. Yes. Okay. Keep going. Okay. Sorry. I just had to
just on the tail end of that one, hunt for breakthroughs.
Okay.
Constantly be asking yourself, how can I do more, better, provide greater value? And remember, this is all the time coupled with radical self-care. I'm not looking for people to compromise their well-being in this quest, but the quest should be alive nonetheless.
Okay, this is really good. And I'm trying to process this right now, but what I want to go back to each one of these steps, each one of these things, and ask you a few follow-up questions. One is on experiencing new worlds. When people are going out and they're maybe they go to Disney or they go to Hewlett Packard or they go to these different places and they have the opportunity to investigate and sit with someone, how do they make the most of that moment? What are the questions they ask? What do they look for? I mean, I'm imagining someone who's listening here and they're writing each step down and they're going about doing it, and they get in, they have the ask, they get in the door, they sit down with the person, and they don't want to waste that moment. How do they make the most of that moment?
Well, think of it like a sacred moment, like you go to a wedding. You're sitting in the front row. Your best friend is getting married. You'll want to soak it up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're going to jump up there on the altar and start wrangling with the minister. And in fact, if anything, you've got a place there, and that's an observer witness place. But you want to be open. You want to be awake. You want to be sensitive.
Right.
So there's an element of this that is not about being aggressive, but it's about being alert and open to what's going on. And sometimes you learn things peripherally. It'll be a phone call that the person takes, or a book that they brought with them. Mm-hmm. So it's not always in that direct give and take. The second thing is you want to ask the questions that are topmost on your mind. Go for the juice. When you have somebody who's a high performer, which is the person, I'm assuming actually both of these people are the high performers, they're turned on by someone asking the tough questions. If someone steps up and really gets into something that has some juice to it, that's an exciting conversation to have.
Right.
So be willing to ask the tough questions and be willing to be vulnerable. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with somebody that I really admire, and I've been afraid to ask the question that's most on my mind, because I think it shows how naive I am. Right?
Yes. And I love it. Karen's down here. She's like, wow, that's amazing. And a great antidote to the imposter syndrome. But isn't that the thing that we're also afraid of being like, I don't want to seem stupid. I don't want to seem like I don't know something I should. But you'll never know if you don't ask, right?
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So vulnerability is a big part of it. And everybody who's on the cutting edge, everybody who's on the frontier is vulnerable, and they know it. Right? I mean, if you're Daniel Boone, there's no 7-Eleven for you to go pick up your food at. You're going to have to go hunt it. And that means that you may only have a day's worth of food, and then you run out, but here you are like 6 weeks off into the wilderness. So that's a kind of vulnerability. And the truth is that innovators are like that. They're creating new stuff, and they're deep in the water, and they don't know how they're going to do it. That's being vulnerable. But people who are comfortable in that environment get excited by it. It becomes a game. It becomes, how are we going to make this work?
So, okay, this is good. The second point that you made, the meeting face to face with people who do what you want to know how to do. When you get in that moment, a lot of people, the stressor for them is getting to that moment. It's trying to figure out how to get connected to those people, especially if those people are sought after or in demand. There's some pressure there, and you don't want to blow it. You don't want to blow your one chance when you make that first reach, right? When you reach out to them, you don't want them to get some sort of idea that you're a user, a taker, that you're not providing some kind of value. So like, what is your recommendation on, or your tips on this point, on how to make the most of this point, meeting with those people face to face?
So there's a great passage in the Bible, and I'm not a religious person, but I just love this passage. It says, when two or more are gathered in his name. There's something special when two people, when the conversation stops being inside your head and it becomes between at least two people. It's like there's a third entity that shows up, and it's extremely powerful. So when you're in this face-to-face moment, you have that. You have two people, and you're going to have a conversation, and that conversation has tremendous potential. And I'm reading something else that Richard Young just wrote about teams and how they have each other's backs. Even though this is a mentor-mentee situation, you're co-creating meaning together. You're exploring a frontier, and you've got to have each other's backs, right? I mean, if I make a slip, you make a slip, we're going to pick each other up and keep going, because this is an exciting moment where we've carved out time. We're finally face to face. And so you have to rely on that a bit. It has to be okay to slip. So with that in mind, then you just go for the gold,
Yeah, right. And I want to mention also, Amanda, and by the way, anyone who's watching this later or listening to this later on the podcast, this is why it is worth making stay at 2 p.m. Eastern time to log in to Crowdcast and be able to participate live, because you are able to interact and add your thoughts and ask your questions. But Amanda here says, Brene Brown talks about this a lot in Daring Greatly. Companies will call her and ask her to speak on innovation and creativity, but they tell her not to talk about vulnerability because they don't do that. But you can't have innovation or creativity without vulnerability. And Amanda says it's her first time here, and this is great. Yay! Woohoo! Okay, so first time, I hope that you come back. Yeah, you know, and I think it's fascinating because, you know, it is, everyone's so afraid. Companies are afraid of allowing themselves or their employees to be vulnerable. But I think that's really such an important thing for us to do that. Now, hold that thought, because I have to break for a quick message from our sponsor. Association Chat doesn't happen without some sponsors. And so I do want to say thank you. I hope you're enjoying today's chat. I'd like to say a quick word about one of our new sponsors, Association Studios. Association Studios provides videos that engage your members. Association Studios is a team of expert writers, video professionals, and social media strategists dedicated to creating engaging videos exclusively for associations. Check them out on associationchat.com under sponsors, or find them on Twitter at ASSN STUDIOS, Assen Studios, Association Studios, and tell them we sent you. Yes, give them some love. We do love our sponsors, and we're very thankful. Each and every week we have somebody there who is willing to support our community. All right. That said, I want to get back to our questions. So Seth, are you ready for some more? I know, I mean, you know, how does this feel? Because, you know, this is an hour-long conversation. It can sometimes feel like you're, you know, under the gun. And I think you're just doing fantastic. So thank you for joining us again.
I'm having fun.
Awesome.
This is great.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay.
Yep. Onward
and upward. Okay. So the third thing that I wanted to follow up on is this mindset of hunting for breakthroughs. Now, a big focus that I have, and I talk about a lot, is this building of curiosity. You know, a couple of years ago, I really wanted to focus on, I realized that I didn't ask enough questions, and I wanted to ask more questions. And certainly in the past 2 years, I figured out how to do that. But I think that this idea of hunting for breakthroughs, it's a challenge, right? And so what are you thinking of when you say that? When you say that we should be hunting for breakthroughs, what does that look like to you?
Well, I like to use the analogy of tracking. I took a course in tracking once from a guy named Tom Brown, who's a world-class tracker. Often gets hired by the FBI and stuff to go out and find people when they're lost.
That is so cool, by the way. You know, I get lost really easily. So being a tracker sounds just amazing to me.
Do you go for walks in the woods?
I do, but there's a trail. I don't go off of the trail too often. So.
Well, I'll tell you a big secret if you're going for a walk in the woods, and I think this is a life secret, which is that occasionally turn around and look at what the trail looks like going in the other direction. Because if you're trying to get back, that's what you're going to be looking at. And often people don't do that. They just walk in one direction and they don't turn around and say, oh my God, look, there's like a tree with a cross on it, or there's a mountain that, you know, you want to know what the way back looks like. So that comes to the idea of when you're hunting for breakthroughs, first of all, you want to know what you're hunting for. You know, when you go tracking, you're looking for a fox or a deer or a bear. There's something in particular that you're going after, or a missing person. So you want to ask the question, where are you being held back in your own personal productivity and ability? You know, like for example, in myself, when I look at my business, I say, okay, you know, at any one time, I have about 10 clients. You know, I'm running the Visionary Leadership Academy, the Visionary CEO community, and I'm writing 2 or 3 books, and I'm maxed out. I can't get to the next level. So what I'm asking is, how do I break beyond that barrier and be able to do this and more? So that's my specific breakthrough that I'm hunting. And then I go find people who are doing that. You need to know what yours is. Where are you being held back from doing what it is that you want to do? And then that's the thing that you look for. Then you need to start looking for the clues. right? So if you're looking for a deer, we know that deer eat the bark off of certain trees. So if you go around looking for those trees and try and find some where the bark is missing, it's like, what is the nature of the thing that you're hunting for? I'm looking for business models for solopreneurs. So I'm out on the web, cruising, looking around for people like the guy you mentioned, and people who are advertising that they have ways for people like me to grow their businesses. And then I'm checking them out. So it's like I'm looking for something in particular. The last thing I want to say, though, is something I said before, which is you have to be willing to be shaken up. And sometimes a breakthrough comes in and it shatters a lot of stuff. And that's part of the game. Again, self-care is important. So I never recommend that anybody do anything that jeopardizes their health or well-being, whether it's emotional or physical or anything like that. But you may have a system down and someone might come along and say, actually, it's the system that you've got that's holding you back, and so you're going to have to change that. And that can be uncomfortable. So that willingness to go into discomfort is important.
It's so interesting. I mean, I feel like, especially I work for myself, and I think that that's something that I'm constantly facing, especially lately. I'm looking at, what are my weaknesses? What are my strengths? And getting very, very honest about all of those. That's not comfortable. And I think that the challenge that all of us face is getting comfortable as possible with being uncomfortable, like sort of seeking that out to figure out where we have areas where we can grow. And for me, that means that I've had to face some things about my own personality that maybe hold me back in business, where I think, okay, I need to move beyond that, and it needs to, separate friendship from business and get very real about the bottom line. And it's not a fun thing. It's not comfortable, but it's just what I have to do. And I think that a lot of us probably have those areas. They're in different areas, but we have those challenges we have to face. What is one tactic that you advise people to use, or one tool that you advise people to use in order to identify what might be holding them back? And I'm putting you on the spot because this is not necessarily leveling up.
No, it's fine.
But I think it's probably in your wheelhouse. So I'm curious as to what you would say.
Well, so to answer that question, I'll tell you a short story. When I was a kid, I was never into athletics. The closest I could get, I like to hike, but not rigorous hiking, just walking in the woods. And that persisted until I was in my 40s. And then I started going to the gym because I knew it was the right thing to do. So I was the guy on the treadmill with the book, just get my pulse up and hanging out. Right. And then one day I was in a seminar that had 8,000 people in it. And the guy on the stage said, "How many people in here work out?" And about a third of the room raised their hand. And then he said, "How many people in here work out more than 5 days a week?" And about 6%, just like 30 people raised their hand out of like 8,000. It's a lot less than 6%. Anyways, and he said, "You know something that nobody else in this room knows." And then he didn't say what it was. He just went on to mention stuff. And I was like, I am going to find out. I want to know what they know. I'm going to go after that. So this was about 2 years ago. So I started working out 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And I've maintained that now for 2 years. And it has pushed my performance up through the roof. Yeah. And so that was the first thing I learned. But here's to answer your question. It has to do with mindfulness. And let me give you a direct example. When I'm on a machine at the gym, I now love the gym. I'm a gym rat. And I use all the different aerobic machines, and I lift weights, and I'm into all of that stuff. So when I'm on a machine and my pulse gets up 140, 150, which is way above where it needs to be for aerobic, you have elevated heartbeat, you're breathing fast. And if I started to get afraid, my old response was always to back off fast, change the circumstances, relax. And what I learned to do was to go inside and start monitoring the different parts of my body and asking the question, where's the limiting factor? Like if I realize that I'm not getting enough oxygen, I'll start doing deep breathing exercises while I'm working out. So I'm on the machine going, if I discover my calves are tight, I'll start focusing on my calves and saying, relax, relax. It's like I start monitoring the different parts of my body, and I look for the place that's the limiting factor, and I address it, and I continue to push myself.
Wow.
That is a form of mindfulness that allows you to identify the areas where you're uncomfortable and address them directly in a caring way. Now, I've been injured before, and I never want to be injured again. So I don't do anything that feels like it's pushing too hard. But what I discovered is that my fear comes up before I've hit that limit. Right. And it keeps me from that special span that's between where I'm afraid and where I would get injured. Right. And I want to move into it.
That's so interesting. And Karen says that's a big marathon strategy. And she'd know, because she does this stuff. She runs. I see her on my social media stuff all the time. I want to be Karen when I grow up. But, I think that is, it's so important to know. And what I'm hearing is mindfulness and consistency. And I think that there's so much strength in that. Being awake and keeping your eyes open and being consistent and understanding when something's working and when it's not. And being willing to be flexible when you see that something needs to change. This is what I'm hearing that you're saying over and over again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I'm working with the senior leadership team, a lot of times I'll do something along these lines around self-care and asking people, where are they getting limited? And I find that with the team that I get very different answers from different members of the team. So like I can think of a team right now that's extremely high performing, and one member of the team gets limited because when he talks to the CEO, he closes down and he can't be authentic. Right. He's afraid of angering the CEO. So I am working with the two of them to have deep conversations where they challenge each other in a safe way. Another member of the team is having issues with what I'd almost call ADD. It's like their attention is constantly flitting from one thing to the next, and they're not able to get the results that they want in the 2 or 3 areas that they've targeted. And so I work with them on setting up systems and getting support from their staff to focus on those 2 to 3 things so that they can move the needle. And a third person has got emotional EQ issues. She's somebody who, when she's upset with her reports, she yells at them as a way to try and increase communication, which of course is horrible. And so we're working on getting her a coach who really understands emotional EQ and can help her with, when she has communication breakdowns, what are some other strategies she can use? It's
so interesting because, it's like and many of us can identify with, we end up in a room or at a table, and for whatever reason, when we seemingly communicate fine in every other situation, for some reason, the dynamic or the personalities seem to shut us down in some way or make us not sort of communicate in the optimal way. And so I think that we can all identify with that. How do we maybe approach that problem on a case-by-case basis? Because, smart teams or teams that have the ability will bring someone like you in, or bring someone in that can say, okay, here's how you can remedy this situation and these interpersonal dynamics. But like, how can somebody say, I'm working with a group, I'm in a group, and that you're not there, nobody's there. How do I maybe help myself in those situations?
Yeah. So I think in my mind, when I'm in a group, there's 3 different mental states that I could be in. One is strong and clear. And obviously you just want to inhabit it when that happens. Just make use of it. If you're feeling strong and clear, go for it. And that means when you're strong and clear, it also, I'm not talking about being aggressive, because you could be quiet and be strong and clear. You could be open. Another is where you get triggered, and that's where somebody says something and you have a reaction that is inappropriate to what they said, and you could start to close down inside. You could get angry, you could get afraid, you could feel ashamed, and when you're triggered, it means that something has been touched in you that this reminds you of, but that's not this situation. And when that happens, the best thing you can do is take yourself out of the game and take care of yourself. And so that means I might say I need to go get a glass of water, or I need to take a break right now. And I go for a walk and do something that helps me understand what it is that's happening and know that I'm going to take care of myself, even if not, I may only have 15 minutes right now, but tonight I'll do some journal writing, or I'll do some exploration around this so I can come back to being in the moment and being connected with someone. And then the third area is when you are uncomfortable because you haven't been able to develop the comfort in this particular place, and it's so new. And this requires the opposite. This is where you have to hang in there and just learn to relax in that environment. One of the places where I know this happens is going on stage. A lot of people get really nervous right before they go on stage. I go on the stage as part of my job, and I've been on stages with 10,000 people. I'm on stage all the time, so I'm very comfortable there. But if I take 6 months or a year off, I'm a little bit nervous the next time I get on stage. And for me, it's just I got to hang in there. Just stay up. And after a while, I relax and I'm good. It's like if someone's scared of flying in a plane, one of the best solutions is to, go for 200 trips over the next 2 years. And, by the time it's over, you're going to be feeling pretty comfortable.
Yes.
It's just because you do it so much. It is safe. It is safe to be on stage. It is safe to be on an airplane. And you just need to learn your own strategies for being yourself in that environment. And then and so that in that situation, if you haven't quite developed the comfort skill yet, then you just got to push yourself to hang in a little bit as you start to relax.
Yeah. It's the funny thing about the on stage part, because I do a lot of speaking, and I have to say that there are two things that have helped me the most. And one is just doing it over and over again. But another is I have my set priorities. I have 3 priorities. They're the top priorities in my life. And anything that falls outside of that just doesn't end up mattering a whole lot. So, hey, you know what? If it's not my family, my spirituality, or my health, we're good. I can handle all the rest of it. And then the other part is just thinking, okay, everything else could go to hell. But if I could just focus on the one piece, like something really valuable, what's the most valuable thing I could give to these people who are listening to me right now? And then it makes it so much easier, because I know that as long as I get that out, then they're going to have something that is meaningful, and I haven't wasted my time or theirs, and that helps me so much. I want to mention Russ, and then we're coming up to the top of the hour. So let me do this. Russ says, I've been to educational luncheons where I loved my table I sat at, and to some where everyone just stared at their phones, which is annoying. I usually just get up and move when that happens. Absolutely. And that's smart, right? That is so smart. Member Clicks, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. They say, that's great advice, Kiki. Thank you for that. Thank you. Seth, oh my gosh, I feel like we could talk forever. And I feel like, it's been so fun. Seth had me on his show to talk with him, and we did a great interview about something totally different, where he talked to me about your professional presence online. And here he is on Association Chat, and he has just knocked my socks off. And I have a million more questions I can think of to ask, but we're running out of time. So Seth, when people want to find out more about you and they want to subscribe and listen and get the newsletter and, keep finding out how they can connect with you, where should they go?
Well, the big intersection with all of my stuff is on visionaryleadership.com. And if you go to the bottom of the page, there's a place where you can subscribe to both of my newsletters. I have a Monday Morning Mojo, which is weird and quirky and comes out every Monday morning. And there's also Visionary Talk, which comes out every Thursday, and it's a video with announcements about my work. And the last thing I'll say is, if you want to be in touch, friend me on Facebook. I love Facebook. Yes. You'll see a lot of personal stuff, pictures of my daughter and my son and my dog, but I'm all about that. And so if and I post stuff about my association work as well. So I'd love to be connected to everybody who's watching this. Just send me a friend invitation.
I love that. Until next time, everyone, keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great week, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode. Did you like it? Please like it, comment, and share on all the socials. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast or on YouTube, and stay curious, everyone. See you next time.